Selma?
Finally get to meet.
Yes. What a
How are
pleasure.
you?
I'm great. Yes. Hi. Yes. How are you? I'm doing all right.
Awesome.
Yeah. Congrats on. I remember we spoke, and you were you were going down to the Board of Elections to, and congrats on making the ballot.
Absolutely.
Yeah. 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 Got out here a couple hours ago. Was just canvassing. Just out here.
This is a whole bunch. Where's Jim?
Yeah. Apparently they're all. There were a few last-minute dropouts and other people on their way.
Why they have a seat?
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. I guess I might as well say hi now since I almost never follow the rules.
Hi, I'm
Hi. Say it again.
My name's Emma. I'm with New York Lawyers for Public Interest.
Testing. Oh.
You, Dr. Bartholomew,
Greetings,
the
everyone.
next mayor of New York City.
Could everybody in the hallway please come in to the sanctuary? We're about to begin.
What happened to your candidates? They're asking.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Reverend Rashad Raymond Moore, and I serve as the pastor of the First Baptist Church of Crown Heights. Okay, I got one person to give me here. And I'm simply coming up this afternoon to welcome you to our home. First Baptist has been here nearly 60 years on the corner of Eastern Parkway and Rogers Avenue, and at the corner of every major movement in the history of our great neighborhood. And as we march into this exciting mayoral season, and indeed it is exciting, we have come on the first day of Mental Health Month to have a conversation that is so important for the life of our city. And so I am honored and I am so blessed that you all have considered us to host tonight's forum. And I want to thank the New York City Mental Health Collective for all of the hard work that you all have been doing behind the scenes for these last couple of months. And so welcome to our home. We hope that you will join us again. And I'll turn it back over to Ms. Christina Sparrow.
Thank you, Reverend Moore. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for this important and timely discussion on the very first day of May, the Mental Health Awareness Month. My name is Christina Sparrow, and I'm the founder of the New York City Mental Health Collective. We are a coalition of over 30 organizations of New York State human services organizations and advocacy groups working together to advance mental health care through a comprehensive community-based approach. Follow us on Instagram at NYC_MHC to learn more about the work that we do. First, I want to express my deepest gratitude to Reverend Moore for opening the doors of the First Baptist Church of Crown Heights to host tonight's Mayoral Mental Health Town Hall. This space, rooted in community, healing, and justice, is exactly where the conversation like this belongs. I want to thank Dr. V from Visionary V for facilitating and making this partnership possible, and also thank the 30 co-sponsors for pulling us off. We did it together, right? We did it together. I also like to take a moment to recognize my core team. Amber, please come up really quickly. I'm sorry. Amber, Miguel, Davila, and Sydney, please come up really quickly to the stage. Hello. So, I guess they're in the other room. So Sydney is right there. So I want to definitely, Amber is our communications director. She's helpful for ensuring our message is clear, bold, and resonant. Miguel Davila is our ethnographer who helps us ground the work in lived experience and cultural understanding. And Sydney Moses played a key role in managing the venue tonight. And of course, the students, Brooklyn Tech students, helped us with our Instagram page. So it looks really nice because of Brooklyn Tech. So mental health is not something that only belongs to those with a diagnosis. It is belonging to all of us. Whether you're a doctor, a pastor, a lawyer, a law enforcement officer, a nanny, a surgeon, we all live with mental health. It's just not physical, but we could treat it just like hypertension and diabetes. It's just a human health condition that is treatable. It's a health condition that we can manage with the right support. So this is why mental health is important, because we can do it. We can get treatment and recovery. Whether we're navigating daily stress, trauma, and more serious conditions, our mental health affects us, how we live, connect, and contribute to society. That's why this conversation is so urgent today. And this is why we have the mayoral candidates who are coming today. We're going to have Jim Walden, Whitney Tilson, Michael Blake, Scott Stringer, Zohran Mamdani, Brad Landers, and Dr. Selman Bartholomew, who are sharing to speak to New Yorkers about their plans on mental health. We're here to ask real questions, share stories, shape policy. But unfortunately, Zellnor Myrie, Jessica Ramos, and Adrian Adams could not make it here tonight because they had other commitments, but their spirits are here. They are for this fight for mental health as well, so please do not forget their contributions as well. As we know, this town hall comes at a crucial time. With ranked choice voting, we have the power to vote, right, and have our voices heard. And with 988, as opposed to calling 911 for mental health emergencies, we need to start calling 988 for mental health resources and support. We don't need to criminalize mental health anymore. And now I'm honored, thank you. And now I'm honored to welcome someone very special to the stage, Chad Coleman, an actor, a producer, a mental health advocate. Many of you may know Chad as Cuddy from The Wire. I know him as Tyrese in The Walking Dead. He was my favorite, and I was really upset when he got killed by the zombie, you know, but he's alive and here today, which I'm grateful for. I first met Chad while walking on the streets in Fort Greene, and he was just talking to everyday people. He's just an everyday guy. But what struck me not was just his talent, but his humility. He was so approachable and kind. And when I told him about tonight's event, he looked at me in my eyes and said, I want to be of service. And this is about humanity. So that's what tonight is about. This is about humanity, about dignity, and about ensuring no one in our city is left behind, because mental health matters. And let's get, and also, if anybody has any questions that they don't want to post, there's a sticky board in the back. Post your questions on the sticky board in the back, okay? And so let's get started, Chad. You're up. Tag, you're it.
Oh, wow. How's everybody doing? I think she said that's enough about me. You know, we certainly not about me, but I'm excited to be here. As they say, hitch your wagon to something greater and be of service to your community. And we all know how important mental health is. And again, as you said, it's in all of our families, and in some way, shape, or form, we all have to negotiate it, and we should negotiate it with compassion, and it should be on the front burner for all of us. And thank you, candidates, and thank you for showing up. And, you know, how you show up is who you really are, so it's wonderful. Again, I'm invested in this cause because I've seen firsthand how deeply mental health affects individuals, families, and communities. And it's not just in my own industry, but across every walk of life. In entertainment, we often shine a light on the struggles people face, but behind the scenes, many people suffer in silence. It's a reflection of what so many New Yorkers experience every day. That's why the work of the New York City Mental Health Collective matters. We're here to raise awareness and insist on accountability, not just in treatment, but in policy. Because whether or not you've dealt with a mental health crisis yourself, the policies that shape our mental health care system affect every single person in this room, the city, and beyond. Mental health is connected to everything: housing, education, public safety, jobs, justice. Tonight, we're here to hear directly from the people who want to lead our city. This is your moment to listen, reflect, and hold them accountable for the changes our communities need. With that, I'm proud to introduce our participating 2025 mayoral candidates. Each will have 90 seconds to share their opening remarks before we dive into the forum.
Okay. Good evening, Reverend Moore. I am Dr. Selma Bartholomew. Can you hear me better now? Not yet. Yeah? Not yet? A little closer?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Good evening. I am Dr. Selma Bartholomew. And I'm honored to have this opportunity to talk with you today, not talk about you. The name Selma is synonymous with change. It is now 60 years since the March on Selma. And although most people think that it was a nonviolent movement, it actually used nonviolent tactics. And in reality, it was a march and it was a fight around passive violence. So why am I saying that to you? Because passive violence, Gandhi says, fuels the physical violence that we're seeing here today. And so for this conversation, I'd like to talk about passive violence in the context of mental health. So what does passive violence look like? It looks like, for example, in our incarcerated individuals not getting food, right? Feeding individuals salami and bologna and grits and rice and acting like if it's all about the mind. That in reality, what I eat, right, impacts how I feel. And so here's a community that is experiencing passive violence. So I am Dr. Selma Bartholomew, and I will be the first woman mayor in New York City.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Whitney Tilson. I am a first-time candidate. Lived in New York for 30 plus years, raised my 3 daughters here, have a career in business, and am running as a change candidate because I'm not satisfied with how the career politicians have been running this city, and I think the failures of our mental health system and are emblematic of that. Like so much of the city government system, we spend an enormous amount of money, yet we can see the results are not satisfactory. And as a business person, I'm a manager, and I know poor management when I see it, and we need to do a lot better job of this. Look forward to sharing my ideas with you. It's a personal issue for me. I have a history on both sides of my family, actually, of mental illness, and in fact, just 2 weeks ago, my cousin passed away from the most deadly form of mental illness that has the highest mortality rate, which is anorexia. 20% of anorexics die in, anyone diagnosed with anorexia, 20% die within 10 years. My cousin, a beautiful woman, incredibly driven, brilliant, successful, loving, and fought this her whole life. And finally succumbed to it a couple weeks ago. So look forward to engaging on these issues with you this evening.
Thanks. Can I use your, oh, there you go. Thank you. So thank you very much for having me. I'm going to stand up just because I can't see you. I'm shorter than Whitney and Selma. So thank you very much for having me. And I'm Jim Walden. I've decided to run for mayor because I, too, want to see a better government for everyone, particularly mentally ill. Like Whitney, this issue is very deeply personal to me. I grew up, and I'm saying this because I want to be part of the vanguard to help destigmatize these issues. It's important even for elected officials to talk about these issues. We grew up in a very challenging, abusive environment. As a result, my older sister, who was the light of my life, suffered from severe mental health problems her entire adult life. She was in and out of mental institutions. Even as I was starting my career as a lawyer, I was a federal prosecutor combating the mob. It was a very stressful job, but I literally had to leave many times. When she threw herself out of the car, when she tried to ingest pills, when she cut herself, she tried suicide many times. Ultimately, our mental health system in the town where I grew up in could not handle her anymore, and so she ended up in jail, thankfully for a short period of time, but when she got out, she was never the same. Ultimately, she died on the street in an altercation in circumstances I still don't clearly understand, but what I do know is that she's dead. That's not the way our government system should work. Our government system should protect the most vulnerable. Every society is judged by how it treats three groups of people: the poor, our prisoners, and our mentally ill. And New York City, despite the fact that we have $1 trillion of revenue that goes through this city every year, has done a lousy job on all three. As mayor, I want to change that. So thank you. I look forward to the conversation.
Good evening. Good evening. I am also a reverend, so praise the Lord, everybody. For those that are here, and Reverend Moore, blessing to be in your house right now. I bring you greetings. My name is Michael Blake. It's not my first time here. It won't be my last. I am a former assembly member from the South Bronx. I served for 6 years in the South Bronx. As you know, we created the My Brother's Keeper program, where we are helping boys and young men of color go to school and graduate from school. The Diversity in Medicine program, focus on the prompt pay bill. Prior to this, I worked for President Obama. I was with him for 7 years. I was with him in the White House for 2.5 years, and then on both campaigns. We are here tonight, and I'm running for mayor because I believe we deserve the new generation of black leadership and a new generation of leadership in this city. Very specifically to the question on what we're doing around mental health and why we have to treat it with the seriousness as it requires. We have to make sure that there's more funding that is going to overdose prevention centers, because we're not being very thoughtful and intentional about addressing the crisis up front. It's about being intentional about drawing down funding from opioid settlement funds, which can allow for our nonprofits to get the support that they need. We need mental health professionals addressing mental health concerns, not police officers, because cops have not been trained in doing that. And so we have to be intentional about that kind of approach and how we move. And so I am running for mayor because we can do something different. And as the only person who has White House, State House, and local experience, as the only person who's been a part of a team that has defeated Donald Trump, if you want to have a new generation of leadership in City Hall, my name is Michael Blake, and I present myself as a candidate for mayor to you, and I look forward to the conversation tonight.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get into it. That was quite an opening, right? Okay, so the first question is the criminal legal system diversion. All right, here's the issue. Data has been revealed that many New Yorkers are seeking mental health services, but they're unable to access them. As of March, there were 672 people waiting to be added to the caseload of one of the city's intensive mobile treatment teams, and similarly, assertive community treatment teams had a 682-person wait list. Homeless people accepted into supportive housing programs wait an average of 367 days. Many people go into crisis while waiting, have interactions with law enforcement, and may wind up in Rikers. So here's the question. What would you do to ensure that all New Yorkers seeking mental health services can access them? If elected, would you establish a target for how quickly eligible people should be assigned an ACT team, IMT team, or supportive housing unit? If so, what would that target be? Okay, we'll start with Michael.
One of the many things we have to do to address mental health, I see you with the 2 minutes, all right? I just started, you're ready to get the sign up right there, right there. One of the things we gotta do right at the gate is actually eliminate the stigma that exists around mental health, because too often, we are not having that conversation in communities of color right out the gate, and in particular when it comes to mental health and homelessness in a very intentional way. And one of the practical things we need to do is actually reimburse and pay our nonprofits up front and faster who are addressing this crisis at hand. We are asking for you to actually help those that are going through challenges, but then saying to you that the city's gonna pay you months, if not years down the line. We have a 988 hotline that most people don't even know that it actually exists. And so that actual greater awareness around utilizing the hotline so people can get the support that they need. Take it a step further. When we think about the dynamics around involuntary confinement, we've allowed the language of it to be negative as opposed to how are we helping people who need the help right now. And so if I see a person who is clearly a harm to themselves or to the community, connecting them and getting them the treatment that they need in a consistent manner is how you actually can address this. But it goes a step further. We can't be a scenario in a society in New York City, which we are right now, where effectively you're trying to get someone off the street and then automatically then you're just saying, I'm gonna help them for a day and then you're turning them back around. That's not helping somebody. There has to be wraparound comprehensive services. So to your question, the answer is yes. You have that intentionality of creating a program, funding it, and making sure you're being supported consistently. Because in a city budget that has $114 billion, there is no good reason why we're not doing this. It is because of a lack of priorities. Maybe if we weren't spending $1.4 billion on NYPD overtime and actually spending on addressing the concerns that the New Yorkers have, we'd be able to address it in a very serious and thoughtful way. We have outlined this entire approach. If you are intrigued in what we're talking about, it's on our website, so blake4nyc.com. I don't want you to look at it while everybody's talking because I want you to listen to everybody else right there. But you'll be able to see the seriousness and how we are approaching this and how we can pay for this and how we can make this all happen.
Thank you. Thank you. And yeah, and we're going to be mindful of the prompts of, with the time, because we don't want to have you here all night long. So we want to be very efficient with that and everybody be aware of those prompts for the young lady sitting right here, okay? I appreciate that. And it's for the people, it's not me at all, so just it's better to keep it addressed out to the people, okay? Okay, yes, Selma, go right ahead.
So you're probably wondering, what kind of doctor is she? So I have a PhD in leadership and in education, and my work is around helping educators and helping schools really transform teaching and learning and the spaces that they work in. So one of the things that I'm committed to are networks of care. And so what often happens when someone is impacted by mental health or homelessness or any life issues, right? The bridge between family and that individual is broken. So I want to figure out in your network of care, who's there? So if I look, for example, at someone who's having a challenge, could it be the hairdresser? Could it be the barber? Could it be the neighbor? And so we now have to now say to an individual, who's in your network of care, and let's bring them to the table, and let's give them the resources, the support, the education that they need. I'm mindful of different models, and so if you look to California, there's an organization called Impact Justice, and they're doing some very transformational work. They're looking at individuals who, for example, come from prison or come from, right, those challenging spaces, and they're saying, wait a minute, why should I put you in a transitional house where I'm in a dormitory style rather than in a home where I can shower and I could feel really good about myself. And so what they've discovered is if they identify members of the community who want to house those individuals, who want to support them, that it ends the return rate, the cycle of from prison and back to the community. They've demonstrated almost an 80% success rate. And so we have to look at models that are working, and we now have to go after relationships, and we have to now connect those individuals and bring community to the table. I've also made a commitment in terms of looking at what models are working, and I am mindful of the time, but let me let you know, as an educator, I always worry more about energy, don't you? Right? Time is always there, so I thank you so much. Yeah, let's go.
This current mayoral administration has failed in so many ways, but let me be specific about the ways in which it's failed our mentally ill. The administration promised to build 360 beds for people in the criminal justice system who are so mentally ill, they've been deemed unfit to stand trial. They're currently rotting at Rikers. 0 of those beds have been built. The 15 by 15 plan to build 15,000 units of supportable housing, we've only have 4,000. As a result, only 3% of the people leaving Rikers are going into supportive housing when virtually all of them need it. And lastly, for people who aren't in the criminal justice system, one of the great public policy disasters of the past half century has been the over-deinstitutionalization. There used to be 95,000 long-term psychiatric beds in New York State. We're down by about 95%. Where have those people gone? Out into our streets, and then too many of them into early death and into our criminal justice system. So in many ways, we have replaced a flawed but long-term psychiatric system, and we've simply moved them from those institutions into our criminal justice institutions, which is madness, both from the damage that's done to our society, to the individuals involved, and at 10 times higher cost. So in the near term, the Manhattan Psychiatric Institution on Randall's Island only has 50 people. It has the capacity for 400, so as mayor, I would work with the state to expand that. And then there's the opportunity to go from 60 to 240 beds at Bellevue and Kings County hospitals for the long-term psychiatric care that people need.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm going to keep standing up. I don't mean to break tradition here or break protocols, but I can just see you better. So the question was really about backlogs and getting more people assigned more quickly and giving supportive housing, if I understood the question. Mm-hmm. Scott didn't hear the question, so I'm just conveying to him that you may want to repeat it for him. So, I'll answer, and then you can give it to him.
What we're going to do is allow Scott to introduce himself,
Okay.
and then we're going to move on to the second question.
Terrific.
Okay.
So in answer to the question, yeah, of course. I try to be. Sorry, I'll start now. So to be clear, we should be expecting as much from our government as we do from our companies. If I was the CEO of a company, and I've run my own firm for 10 years, and I said that we were going to do something on a certain clock, then you'd expect that we deliver it. Too many people are delayed in getting the help that they need, being assigned the services that they need, because the city doesn't even put itself on a clock. So you can be in that queue of 600, and you can be there for 2 months, 6 months, 8 months. It doesn't really matter because there is no time frame. So as someone with 30 years of experience getting big things done, I'm going to put the city on a transparent clock where people know how long they're going to wait, and we're going to put the money into the system that we need. We've got, as Michael said, we've got a $114 billion budget. How much of that is devoted to a single agency that can give mentally ill people and people with mental health challenges all of the services they need in a timely way? That's what I'm going to get done as mayor. And I'm going to substantiate that with a new housing program that is going to solve this riddle that Whitney referred to as the mayor's 15 by 15 program, which was great in theory, but terrible in execution. So there's, not to complicate this, there are 2 forms of housings that are used for people with mental health challenges. They're ahead of schedule with respect to one. They're woefully behind schedule with respect to the other. I would scrap what's undone and start a new program that was built on modular housing solutions, which are affordable, which can be put on open land, and where services can be co-located in those communities so you can get the maximum support of wraparound services, deliver them more efficiently and less expensively than the way we're doing it now. So number 1, I would get mentally ill people out of Rikers. Number 2, I would get them out of the shelter system completely. And number 3, I would give them housing immediately with the services that they need on a time clock that they could plan their lives because they knew when in the queue they were going to get the solutions they need to make their lives better.
Thank you. So Scott, now you get to properly introduce yourself before we move on to question 2.
Thank you, sir, and sorry I was running late. I try to get here at these things an hour early. No, that's not true either. But it's really great to be here and be here with all of the candidates running for mayor. A little bit about me. I'm a born and raised New Yorker. I grew up here back in the day. I went to public school. I'm raising my 2 little kids, a 13-year-old and 11-year-old. They're in public school right now, and no, they're not my grandchildren, they're my kids, and I just want you to know that. And I talk about them because that's really what motivated me to run for mayor. Because the truth is that this city has always been about generations helping generations. And when you think about the people who built this city, the people who struggled, the people who came to neighborhoods that nobody wanted to live in and then set up roots and built daycare centers and schools, created the very not-for-profit institutions and networks that have helped so many people. It's really incredible to me that the very people who built our neighborhoods are being pushed out, right? The speculators come in, they take the land, and they take you out. That's what we've seen in Brooklyn. That's what we've seen in places like Brownsville when they say, well, let's build, build, build. Yes, you build, but you forgot that the senior living in the brownstone got the rent increased 3 times and went out. And now why does that matter for the subject today? Because it does matter. Because we have got to rebuild our social safety net in this city. We've got to make sure that people have an opportunity to live their lives with whatever comes their way. And so by introduction, former assembly member, Manhattan Borough president, controller, you know I had the skills to pay the bills, and now running for mayor for the 2nd time, because sometimes you got to get it right. But I'm running because, like you, I love this place. And we need someone with experience who knows how to manage and get things done, finally, for the people of this city. And I'm glad to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Skills to pay the bills. All right. Okay, so question 2. We're going into healthcare. Okay? So now the issue is A leading cause of black maternal death is mental health, suicide, and overdose. Over 90% of these deaths were considered preventable. Black and brown women are often unable to access mental health care because there are very few psychiatric mental health clinicians who provide services to expectant and postpartum parents, take Medicaid, and have prescriptive authority. The question is, what will you do if you're elected mayor to address the issues of black and brown maternal mortality? And Michael, we're gonna let you go first. We know you're time challenged. Right?
I'm gonna extend it a little.
Oh, okay. Well,
They just
still
meant time
going?
challenge because they thought I had to leave early because we had said that, not because like I'm, well, y'all understand. We're good, right? Okay.
He had to leave
Just
early.
saying.
Exactly.
It sounded like there was a lot of shade. There was no shade going on right there. Let's be clear about that. Right?
Exactly. My bad.
It's all good. Look, this is something that, my wife and our girls and our family talk about regularly itself, and something I prioritized when I was in the assembly, when I co-led the diversity in medicine effort. We are not doing enough to protect black women, full stop, especially when it comes to maternal health, right? And maternal and mental health being intertwined. It's the reason why we have to have more funding that goes for doulas. It's the reason why we have to have more funding for midwives. It's the reason why we got to be more intentional around these efforts. Because too often, you are going to a doctor, you're going to a nurse, you're going to a practitioner who is telling you you don't feel the pain that you feel. What you're going through, you can endure that. It's not that bad. It's not that, when actually it is. And so then thereafter, then they're trying to overprescribe to try to heal you, as opposed to, did you actually talk to me? Did you actually work with me? Did you find more ways? One of our team members right now has a 4-month-old on our team. And we don't make more time as a society to give you time and recognize not only do we have to give you more time after you have had a child, but also how are we being supportive as you're raising the child? Because it's not just about what happens over those 9 to 10 months, it's about how do you raise a child for the rest of their lives. And so too often we are not intertwining the two. So one, it's an expansion of the work we've done around diversity in medicine, where we need to hire and support and pay more doctors, nurses, and a part of all the ecosystem. Second, we have to be very intentional around how mental health is intertwined with maternal health, by ensuring that not only we're providing the funding, but we're also making sure the nonprofits and the providers are being implemented and supported. And then lastly, is that we have to, and I'm going to talk about this consistently, we have to make sure more people are aware of how to get the support that they need. And the fact is that most people don't even know that we have the 988 hotline, and it's not being staffed by people that look like us and come from our neighborhoods, is a critical reason why we're not getting the support that we need. And if you do it that way, you'll be able to protect our families.
Thank you.
Woman, it's so important to own your space, so I'm going to stay sitting. Thank you. One of the things that I want to give to New York City is a quality of life index tool. You know your zip code, correct? But do you know what is in your zip code? Can you easily find the parks? Can you find where the florist is? And so we can say, for example, that we want doulas, but do we fundamentally know how many doulas we have in each and every zip code? Do we know, for example, where the mental health services professionals are? So I want to give you a quality of life index tool. You're going to like it because you can first look in your zip code. Why do I need it as the mayor of New York City? Because New York City has no transparency. There are things that are constantly coming into our neighborhoods, and we need to be able to make some different decisions about budgets. So I need to be able to know in everyone's zip code, right? What is it that you have by way of mental health services? And now you can drive funding in a very different way, The other thing I'd like to say to you is I am a black woman, and the reason why also we are stressed is because this city has kept us poor. They kept us poor. I own a business in New York City, and under the leadership of your Scott Stringer, your Brad Lander, your mayor's office, we make less than 1% of the budget. So if I'm stressed financially, right, then all of that stress impacts my baby as well. So we're going to have to raise people's capacity in terms of being able to afford this city. And so I'm focused on building businesses and building eco-hubs across the city where you can now come to these eco-hubs and learn how to build your business. We have people in here who could build businesses around mental health. You can build a business and you can tell us what it is that we need to do for you. You have the answers, and I now need to give you the capacity in order to service the members of the community, and that's not happening. You don't own most of the nonprofits. And so part of what I want to do is really change the nature of how we go about servicing our communities, and we have to go about first building each other up, building businesses, and really changing the nature of the relationships. There's a lot of poverty pimps in this space for mental health as well as in education. People making money off of you, but not really solving the problems. I think that the solutions lie in this room, and it's my job to create a pathway where you can now bring those solutions forward, and we can fund them, and we can elevate you and elevate our city.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think the maternal mortality crisis among Black and brown women that you mentioned is reflective of our broader healthcare system and the inequities that we as a city have allowed to fester there, but even more broadly beyond our healthcare system, in our educational system, our streets, our parks, you name it. The city government is failing New York broadly, despite spending more, having a budget double that of any other city in the world. But in particular, it's failing our highest need communities. As mayor, I will rectify that and focus my administration on serving the communities that most need city government to work for it. This comes, I can understand perhaps an arched eyebrow from a business person who looks like me, but it might surprise you to know I actually grew up in Tanzania and Nicaragua. First school I ever attended, I was the only white kid in Morogoro, Tanzania. My first job out of college was helping start Teach for America right here in New York. I've been on the board of KIPP charter schools for more than 20 years. Focusing on addressing the deep systemic educational inequalities in our system. And my first job out of business school 31 years ago was actually starting something called the Initiative for a Competitive Inner City that I ran for 5 years. We worked with small, mostly minority-owned businesses in New York and around the country, raised $1.7 billion to invest in helping these businesses grow. So I've got a lifelong commitment to helping underserved communities and addressing inequalities in our healthcare, educational system, and economic system.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the question was, what am I going to do about it? And in 90 seconds, to deal with such an important issue, I'm not going to do it justice, but I'm going to tell you where I'm going to start. In 2018 and 2019, I represented the entire NYCHA community and got to know them pretty well. I've been in many, many communities. I was just in a community last week. I'm going to be in another community this week. And what I know for sure is, with respect to Black and brown mothers, that is a place that is woefully underserved, and there's a great opportunity there, and I'm going to be the mayor that solves this problem. We need maternal care and health care and mental health care in the community centers. How many people have been in NYCHA communities? Just give me a raise of your hands. No. How many of you have been in the community centers? They're great places that are underserved and underfunded, and if we are going to get to maternal care and mental health care, we need to put maternal and mental health programs in those community centers and fund them aggressively. Not just giving them an adequate amount of money, but giving them the money that the communities need to help solve their problems, because they're dealing with a mental health crisis that is so much worse than the mental health crisis in other places that have plenty of resources, and they have very few. They have trouble even keeping their lawns and their playgrounds safe. So when I'm mayor, I am going to invest in those community centers. I'm going to invest in maternal health care programs and mental health care programs to get those community centers doing what they should be doing for those communities, which is giving them the support that they've lacked for 50 years and they've deserved every single day of that time.
Thank you.
You know, the reality is that we do have a two-tier health system in the city in the same way we have a two-tier education system, right? We're told that education is equal and free for all, except when we have a problem, right? Except when something goes down. And there are two types of people, right? If something's wrong with your child, a mental health issue, a physical issue, some parents have the ability to put down a credit card and say, fix this. Other parents who are working 2 jobs, live at night shifts, single parents, they don't have the resources. And that's the failure of government, because healthcare has to be equalized, just like education has to be equalized. And the question that we have to ask ourselves of the next mayor is, what is a specific plan to make sure that we can begin that equalization moment? Michael Blake is right. We need doulas. We need midwives, partly because people don't feel comfortable going into a hospital or a city hospital. And that's the reality. And we have to make sure that we have an opening for people to come in, a port of entry, so that we can begin to deal with the real issues that are here. What we need, I think, is a real close look at H&H, the public hospitals, 11 public hospitals, to look at their programs, to look at the programmatic work that they're doing, to look at their outreach and supplement those resources, because the reality is, when I was controller, we kept seeing shortfall after shortfall. Where? In H&H, in the hospital system, because unless you can afford to pay, right, the health and hospitals will pick up the cost, but you know that the outpatient and the real resources you need are not available. We need to start building out a new safety net in New York City.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. And guys, just want to gently prompt everyone, just stick to the 2 minutes. We really appreciate it. Okay, so we're moving on to question 3, and that's going to deal with employment, okay? So the issue is, in the nation's Federation of Independent Businesses 2024 Small Business Problems and Priorities Report, the #1 ranking issue amongst those surveyed was the cost of health insurance, with 40.7% of small business owners reporting this problem as critical. Here's the question. How will your administration support small businesses and all employers in becoming more inclusive for employees with mental health needs? Would you commit to providing funding to small businesses to help them comply with ADA requirements and foster mentally healthy workplaces? Let's start on the other end, okay?
Yes, I would commit to that for sure. And I think we have to rethink how we approach and help and maintain the small businesses, which are the anchor of this city. But I'll tell you what I did as controller and I'd like to do as mayor. A lot of people who start businesses, right, have a lot of capital that goes with it. And then there are people who struggle as startup businesses. And one of the ways that we can help a small business is when we certify a business as a women and minority-owned business, that is an entryway to getting city contracts. And that is important because once you get a city contract and you're a business in Brooklyn or the Bronx and diverse communities, you uplift the entire community because you hire locally. You invest in the community. You have a stake in the community. But when I was controller, I looked at how many certified MWB businesses were actually getting contracts from the city, and we started to letter grade the agencies based on their actual spend with MWBEs. We failed all of these agencies. If you were African American, F. If you were a woman-owned business, F. If you were Latino, F. The truth is that the same people who got the city business year after year were continuing to get it. And when we did the letter grading, I realized that it's going to be a tough time to move the city infrastructure to broaden the reach. And that's why, as controller, I appointed the city's first chief diversity officer to work on these MWBE issues, and then followed and called on the mayor to put a chief diversity officer in every single agency. As controller, we letter graded our own agency. And you know what I gave myself the first year? A C. Second year, a B. It took me 3 years to equalize the spending and break up the institution there. And the reason that matters is because if our small businesses don't have resources going in, don't have the benefit of city contracts, then they're not going to be able to pay the health insurance. They're not going to be able to be compliant with city agencies that fine and fee our small businesses. And I believe that that's a gateway, especially in communities of color, where we invest big in MWBs.
Thank you.
So the answer is I would absolutely support it, but support small businesses and getting them what they need for their employees, but I want to be specific about it, right? There's an old saying that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I'll tell you the one thing that we learned during COVID, which is virtual mental health assistance works. It's worked across the board, and it's available, and it's a program that the city should start in connection with a new employee assistance program for employees of small businesses, right? Employee assistance programs are very common in large companies, and they're voluntary because they want people to opt in. What we really need to do is starting to take steps to make them mandatory so that we can reduce and eliminate the stigma of being on an employee assistance program and having the health care and mental health care services you need, even if we start off with a program that is largely virtual. If we do that for our small businesses, we do that for our small business community, including its employees, we will be taking a major step forward. Because if there's anything that you can learn from looking at the data, it's that employee assistance programs work. And employees, once they're in a culture that destigmatizes the use of employee assistance programs, particularly for people with mental health challenges, the results are great. Productivity goes up, happiness goes up, healthcare costs eventually go down, and it can work. If we deploy it across the city for our small businesses, we will be doing a favor for ourselves, for our mental health, and for the employees that work in so many of our small businesses across our communities.
Thank you.
My answer to your question, Chad, is I'm not sure because it's not an issue that I have heard often from small businesses, frankly. I'm a small business owner myself, have built half a dozen small businesses over the last 30 years here in the city. And so I've spoken with more small businesses than I can count. And so I would definitely be open to it if I was talking to the small business community and there was a role for the city government to assist them in this area. I will tell you the number one thing I hear from nearly every small business that relates to mental health is people with mental health issues that are stealing from their business, making their employees or customers feel unsafe, et cetera. I suspect there will be questions later in terms of, how do you deal with the street homeless, the latest debate that I think has been resolved in Albany over involuntary commitment, whether police what role police should play versus mobile intervention teams, et cetera. So in the interest of time, I'll leave my thoughts on how to address this, but I just wanted to share that when I hear over and over again from small businesses that people are just coming in, stealing from them. One small business owner's son was actually assaulted by someone who the son was trying to stop from stealing from their store. Restaurants where a homeless person comes in and just steals food or smashes a bottle on the ground, terrorizing their patrons. Those are, we need to help the people who are doing this, and also that will help our small businesses.
Thank you.
After a full career in education, I had taught at every single level. College, I taught at Lehman College, I taught at Fordham, I worked for the National Science Foundation. When the recession hit in 2008, I had to step out on faith, and I founded my business. I own an education company. In 2008, I discovered the filthy truth about New York City, which is that I had no opportunity as a small business, as a woman-owned business, as a black business. And so I flew. I flew across the country. I went to the Dakotas and built up their economic system and their ecosystems to help them improve their schools. I stepped into this mayor's race because I was angry. That's one of the reasons. Around the fact that in New York City, you're a woman, raise your hand. Raise your hand if you're a woman in this audience. Raise your hands, because in New York City, they don't think that you should have pockets. You made less than 1% of the budget every single year under Mayor Adams, under your comptroller Brad Lander, under your comptroller Scott Stringer, under Mayor de Blasio, under every single mayor. They give us the rhetoric that we don't deserve any financial opportunity. So black people, black businesses made less than 1%. Women, less than 1%. Hispanics, less than 1%. It's time that we understand how the numbers impact the quality of our lives. So I have made a commitment to build eco-hubs across the city. I want to make our children and individuals millionaires. We have individuals from the incarcerated population who can't get jobs. Let me help you build businesses. So I want to put eco-hubs across the city, give them the resources that they need in order to build their business, bring in other businesses, let them coach them, and let me tell you how I will make you a millionaire. In this city and in this state, New York State for the past 5 years have been given matching venture capital funds. In the city, that money has not touched us. Why? Because our elected officials are pushing poverty pimping us instead of building businesses. That's what we're feeling right now. We need an economic engine. And so as mayor of New York City, I have made a commitment to build businesses, give them what they need in order to grow. That's why we are struggling. They think that we are poor. No, we are poorly organized with poor leadership.
We appreciate
with poor
your passion.
leadership.
Thank you.
Working backwards to your question, yes, around the element of what are we doing around the ADA and ensuring that when we talk through for mental health support in small businesses, that we're giving that level of support. Because right now, we are not doing that effectively when it comes to our small businesses, and we got to go a step further. We're not helping people with disabilities in any regard fully in this city when it comes to what's happening with small businesses. We're not being more intentional around, why y'all leaving for my answer? No, I'm just playing with y'all, right? We're not being more intentional about having more elevators at subways. We're not being more intentional about how we have actual better access when it comes to your sidewalks, when it comes to wheelchair ramps. We're not being more intentional about the businesses actually having greater access, and we're not being more intentional about the housing that we're building, where too often we still have too many people that have to go through walk-ups itself. So it's all intertwined to that question. To the broader degree, around how do we help and support those that are in our small businesses to get the help that they need as it relates to mental health. First and foremost is that we actually need to make sure that we do not allow contracts to continue to go to businesses that are discriminating against those with mental health concerns. It doesn't really make sense that we are allowing discriminatory behavior to be in place and for someone to profit off of that. That's just wrong. And we can't be selective with our discrimination in that regard, and that's unacceptable. Second, we have to find more ways that we're creating the pipeline of success for someone that is having mental health concerns to be able to get and keep and grow their jobs to have greater wages, because just because you're going through mental health concerns does not mean you shouldn't be able to make money. And so there has to be that intentionality of how we create this pathway. I'm a small business owner myself. I run 2 small businesses right now. I run a National Democracy Project. I led the Minority Business Program at the White House. I created the Prompt Pay Bill in the Assembly, and we were intentional around this. And so when we think about these dynamics, it's all intertwined. Lastly, because I know the time is here, I totally agree with Jim in that one of the rare things that we learned during COVID is that virtual collaboration and connection with a mental health therapist is essential. It will allow you to be better. And while I hear the point around public safety, yes, public safety is concerned, no question about that. Let's not let the rhetoric to continue about people with mental health are the reasons why your small businesses are not actually healthy right now. That can't continue. We are Democrats, not Republicans.
Thank you. In the interest of fairness, when you come to a red light, what do you do? So we don't drift into the intersection. So let's be mindful. Thank you. Okay, so we move on to question 4, and Selma kind of moved us right into this, education. So the issue is, the 2023 State of Mental Health Report of New Yorkers found that 48% of New York City's teens experience depressive symptoms. Despite the growing youth mental health crisis in New York City, our schools still lack comprehensive, evidence-based mental health education and supports. Question: what steps would you take to integrate mental health education and resources into the educational system to support the mental well-being of students? And let's start in the middle this time, and I'll work us through.
In fact, it's even worse than you think. The 48% of our teenagers who experience depressive symptoms, a third of them, 16%, report having had suicidal thoughts in the past year. It is a crisis. I have 2 ideas to address this. The first is we need to significantly expand the number of public high schools, and even I would say down to middle schools is where it's now starting, that have clinics that can help with various health and mental health issues with trained people who can deal with mental health issues as well. But realistically, it's not going to be in every school, but at the very least, every school should have, for some reason my mic is off, so I'll just speak loudly. Oh.
You're good. I think you're fine.
I may have accidentally hit the off button on my microphone. Okay. Hold on. There we go. My mic is working once you flip the on switch on. So in the absence of a clinic, because realistically I don't think we have the city or state funding to put a clinic in every high school or middle school. We have 1,800 schools in New York City, to give you a sense of the scale here. Have someone in the school who at least has this training to address this crisis. And secondly, I have long been advocating, and I'm glad as of this morning's paper I read that the state legislature, as part of the latest budget, has banned all cell phones, has finally come to an agreement on that. I believe there is a massive, dangerous, uncontrolled experiment going on that is particularly affecting our youth. In the United States and across the world, and the very least we can do is get rid of these cursed devices entirely during the school day.
Thank you. Selma?
My work in education is around ending the social reproduction of failure. A school system that really takes away the confidence, the voice, the purpose, and the passion of our young people. What I've discovered is that there's a breakdown in relationships, right? That you can come to class and no one necessarily is really asking you, how are you today? And not making that space. That the culture of New York City schools is all about the test. Data. My mission for my campaign is win our children back. Win them back from the weed that they are pushing on our children, and win them back from those spaces of sadness and depression. So how do I do that? How about we give our kids art again? How about we give them some music again, right? I've made a commitment to teach 1.5 million children how to swim. How to swim. The other thing also is the school day has to be restructured. We have to be honest that our high school students, they work, for example, at Barclays till 1 a.m. in the morning, and they're showing up to school at 7 a.m. Why don't we reorganize the day so that they can now find opportunities for work, be able to access a clinic so that they're not stuck in the paradigm of that school day. They are desperate for change. They are desperate for some new opportunities. And so I have made a commitment to work with my leaders, bring my kids to the table, and to really reorganize and really reimagine school and to really create spaces. And so your kids cannot do math if they never learn how to draw a picture. Your children are in elementary schools. They don't have sand. They don't have water. And so we have to now go back into our schools and fundamentally reimagine. And let's go get our kids back. Let's go get them back. We're the adults. We could do this work together. Let's go win our children back.
Thank you.
Every student in New York City, if you give me the chance to be your mayor, needs to have civics, financial literacy, and mental health before they graduate. We have a society right now, we have a school system right now that's effectively trying to train a bunch of kids to pass a test rather than making them global citizens who are actually learning. And so, as a student from PS 79, 118, DeWitt Clinton High School, where I was at the elementary school that they talked about at Savage Inequalities, the fact that we find priorities for all other things as opposed to making sure that every child has access to talk to someone, to engage with someone, as well as for all educators and people a part of the scenario, because we continue to operate from a space that, well, you're going through some things, but don't talk about it. But then we're wondering about why they are not able to thrive in the way they need to be. There's other changes we also have to make when it comes to education if we talk about the sanity of this, because the reality is stress leads to mental health concerns. So we should recognize that when you have 1 out of 8 New York City public school students are homeless, if you have a transient lifestyle, that has to be addressed. You have to change it so you don't have kids eating lunch at 10:30 or 11 o'clock in the morning, because then they're hungry later in the day and then they can't focus. You have to actually have families make more money and keep more money in your pocket, because if you're wondering what's happening in my household, of course I'm going to have challenges. But then you got to go a step deeper. As a son of Jamaican immigrants, where we have to make the immigration conversation broader, there's not just Latino, it's Caribbean, it's African, it's all of us. We have no business in ICE being allowed at our schools or our places of worship or our community centers. Because if you do that, it leads to attendance rates being impacted, because you are wondering every single day what's happening in my community. So we will have mental health professionals for every single school, for all of our students, virtual and in person, and ensure you have the protections that you need. You can see the entire way we've laid out this vision. And lastly, this is why we need to expand out what I've done with the My Brother's Keeper and My Sister's Keeper program, because we're not going to allow anti-blackness to continue to come from DC.
Thank you. Scott?
I think the real challenge in the public school system, especially post-COVID, is to identify and intervene at the earliest possible moment with children who are beginning to show signs of suffering from mental illness or other issues that are disability in nature. You know, the fact that if you're in pre-K and the teacher is watching you in a small class, and you can look at a child and say, why isn't that child able to hold a pen, right? Well, that means because there's no body strength. That may not matter today, but if you don't get help for holding that pen when you're in pre-K, by the time you're in 6th grade, you can't write. And we do not do enough at the early intervention side. That's why I believe in childcare, baselining 3K and pre-K. And here's something my kids hate. I think we should extend the school day to 4:30, right? Because we've got to give parents an opportunity to have their careers, but our kids need tutoring. Our kids need mental health help. They need athletics. They need chess. Whatever they need, that building should not get turned over to law firms who are having basketball games at night. I'd keep that community center round the clock because that's what a school is. It's a centerpiece of a community. So that is my position. I know we have new candidates arriving, but here's something I want to talk about kids real fast for 20 seconds. I have to leave. It's not because I have a fundraiser. It's not because I'm waiting to address a rally. My wife's working tonight, and if this campaign of mine is going to continue and I don't get home to those kids, it's over. So thank you all very much. I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you. Okay, Jim.
Let's give Scott a hand for getting home and helping out. That's nice. So the question was about mental health supports. Again, I can't say this enough, like a critical gating item. And it's particularly true in our schools, and it's particularly true in our underperforming schools where kids are under the most pressure, right? Pressure at home, pressure with job insecurity with their parents, housing insecurity, benefits insecurity. I've been there, I know it, I understand it. We have to destigmatize getting therapy. We just do. Therapy can really help every single kid, but for kids that are under those sorts of pressure, getting therapy early in a stigma-free environment is critical. And so when I'm mayor, I want to start a program, and it's going to have to start as a pilot program because I'm a data-driven guy, and I want to make sure it will work. But it's called Therapy for All. Therapy for all means every kid can get the same sort of therapy that rich people can get. How do we do that? It's complicated. Number one, we need more people that will volunteer their services, but we have access to colleges and universities all over the city. We can partner with them to increase the number of people that get mental health certifications, even if they're not practicing psychiatrists. They can partner. We can include a certification requirement, just like lawyers have to do pro bono work, and I've done my share. Therapists that are new can also be required to do some amount of pro bono counseling, but I want to make therapy destigmatized in our public schools, particularly the underperforming ones, and see how that changes outcomes for kids. Because I believe what every single mental health expert will tell you, if you get people accustomed to the idea of therapy early, and you destigmatize it, and you make quality counseling available, you will have better outcomes for kids.
Thank you. Thank you. So we know we have a new candidate here, so we're going to allow you to introduce yourself, and then we'll move on to question 5.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Zohran Mamdani. It is such a pleasure to be back here at First Baptist, and I really want to say thank you for having me. I apologize for only being able to join for the second half of this forum. I am a state assembly member representing parts of Astoria and Long Island City. I am running to be the next mayor of this city to finally make the city that we call our home the same city that we can actually afford. And what we see here in the most expensive city, in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, is that the working class New Yorkers who built this place are now being priced out of this place. And this may seem to be somewhat of a separate topic than that which is at hand tonight about mental health, but I would say that affordability and mental health are deeply interconnected. Because if you cannot afford your rent, if you cannot afford your childcare, if you cannot afford your groceries, or if you're 1 in 5 New Yorkers who cannot afford their Metro card, then you will feel the stress of trying to live in this city. And that is a stress that sometimes you can control and sometimes you cannot. And it is a stress that might have many of us being categorized in the same language that we use tonight of SMI. And it is a stress that while we must treat directly, we can also work to ensure that not every New Yorker has to experience. And so I am excited to share my proposals and my vision for confronting the mental health crisis in this city, and also to doing the work to ensure that every New Yorker can afford this city and need not be trapped in that same hamster wheel that so many of us seem to be. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and welcome. Okay, we now move on to question 5, that's family support. The issue: families are often the primary support system for individuals living with mental illness and mental health challenges. A major gap in the mental health care system is the lack of structured support and inclusion of families who play critical roles in prevention, early intervention, crisis care, and long-term recovery. Question: as mayor, what specific policies or initiatives would you implement to formally integrate family engagement and support services into the city's mental health continuum, including funding, training, and care coordination? Let's start with the new guy.
I can't even complain about that. I invited that on myself. There are a few things that I would say to this. The first is that families across our city are caring for those that they love that are experiencing a mental health crisis. That is care that is often unseen. That is care that is often uncompensated. And part of what we must do as a city is start to share that responsibility. There are a few things that I would say. The first is, I know we were just speaking about schools and young people. If you look at our schools, we have more school safety agents than guidance counselors and social workers combined. That means that the work of those positions is left to the families of those students. We need to ensure that those students, that they are not simply receiving that support when they go home, but also when they go to school. And additionally, when families are taking care of those that they love who are in the throes of a crisis, they may look to the individuals that are most tasked with responding to mental health in our city, which is currently the NYPD. Or they may look to the institution which is most responsible for addressing mental health, which is Rikers Island. This is not how it actually has to be. We know that this is a failure of governance, because in our city, if you are a member of a clubhouse, a peer-led institution that addresses mental health for New Yorkers with serious mental illness, if you are a member, you will see drastic increases in your ability to feel that you belong, in a lack of loneliness, in the reduced hospitalization, in employment. And you know how much it costs to have a New Yorker be a member of a clubhouse such as Fountain House for a year? $4,000. That's how much it costs to be in the hospital for 2 days, or on Rikers Island for 3 days. What we need to do as a city is to scale up these pilots that have been successful, ensure that every neighborhood has a clubhouse, ensure that we have community health, mental health navigators in every single neighborhood, so that families are not the only place that New Yorkers who are struggling can find care, and that we can finally ensure that we too share the responsibility of taking care of our neighbors.
Thank you. We'll just go straight down the line. Straight down the line.
So I spoke before about the importance to me of building real supports in NYCHA communities through the community centers. So I'm not going to retread that ground. But I agree with Zohran that supporting families requires us to do a better job with affordability. And that is why, among other things, when I issued my housing plan, and I came up with a new model to reimagine what we're doing in low-income communities to create economically integrated communities that have all of the services that families need. The reaction that I'm getting from the NYCHA communities that I've talked to about this is nothing but excitement. I was in one meeting where a tenant president almost started crying when she heard about the vision, the bold vision, for taking these segregated, isolated communities where families get very little support and their children have very few visible role models in terms of people that have gone around the world and traveled and had big jobs and helped build infrastructure. To have them all together supporting the NYCHA community will be the family support. that will help these communities thrive and give them the services and the resources that they need. But it doesn't stop there, because we don't need more basketball courts in NYCHA communities. We need after-school programs, and that will help support the families, because parents that are holding down 3 or 4 jobs at all different times, sometimes with single-parent household, insufficient child care, need an extension of the school day, and they need after-school programs in their communities so their kids are local and safe. And so that is going to be another aspect of building out the NYCHA community centers to have after-school programs there. I'm sorry, I know I'm out. To make sure that there are academic programs, reading programs, math programs that are available in the communities to help support the families who are already struggling with the affordability crisis in New York.
Thank you.
I very much agree with the premise of your question that for people struggling with mental illness, often the very best support comes from within the family. When I heard a very poignant, tragic story when I visited Rikers a few months ago, where someone who's been there a long time said one of the greatest tragedies of the COVID pandemic was because it disproportionately impacted, it was elderly black and brown citizens of New York who died disproportionately because of COVID. It wiped out many of the patriarchs and matriarchs of families that were necessary for people. And keep in mind, every single person at Rikers does get out. It's a jail. It's a short-term system. So one of the ways I'd like to help address this and increase the support of family members is there's a statewide Medicaid program called Consumer Directed Personal Assistance Program, CPAP, that is generally focused on someone, if they're caring for an elderly person, they can receive Medicaid funding. I would push to expand that so that it can also provide funding for someone who's caring for someone in their family who's mentally ill.
I grew up in Harlem, and I went to high school at Clara Barton High School, not too far from here. When I was growing up in Harlem and attending Clara Barton High School, we had a wave of the crack epidemic in this city. It destroyed families, not just one person, but families were devastated. And so this approach in our city, that we're speaking to just families rather than speaking to a network of care. So I often hear people say things like, where are their parents? We're not really being honest about the challenges that our children are facing, right? And so we need to now talk about how do we go about building the village. And so I've been spending time with my youth and my young people, and they said, Dr. B, we want to see a dual support centers. We want to be able to have in our, remember I talked about your zip code, to bind people by zip code and to be able to now use your space. You've got church spaces, yes, you've got community centers, but it's not so much the space, it's much more the culture. To be able to now invite the grandparents, invite the neighbors, give them the training that they need, allow people to understand how to talk to each other, right? How to talk to your young people. And so we want to begin to really build these networks of care within our community. And these networks of care really represent the intergenerational village. Our seniors are desperate to get to know our young people, and our young people deserve the wisdom, right, from those, to begin to just have somebody that you can talk to, that you can lean to. We have what we need in our community. We just have not been effectively tapping into it. And so my goal is to build networks of care to attack the passive violence that we are feeling within our culture and within our city. Thank you.
Thank you.
A fundamental way that we help our families to provide the support is to actually make sure we learn what do families need and then support that up front. You voted for the true cost of living 2 years ago, and Eric Adams has not implemented that. The reason why true cost of living is so tied to this question is right now we're only assessing poverty metrics as opposed to what are the cost of childcare and housing and family support, education, so that we can then make sure that you actually have all the support and resources that you can provide for the person that is going through what's happening right now. It's not happening right now. It's a reason why we have to go a step further. I have said consistently that we need a local median income because area median income is not working for us. AMI doesn't make any sense at all when you're incorporating Westchester County and other places as it relates to what's actually happening in Brooklyn or in the Bronx and other dynamics. We have to be then more intentional of how are we actually reimbursing and granting our nonprofits earlier to then make sure there's providing support so that when the families are saying, I need help, where do I go to help my family member who is going through this challenging time, they then actually have supportive services to make that connection there. It is a bit interesting that you're now watching the city council talk about this and try to address this now that a mayoral campaign is happening. Why weren't they trying to address this before is a whole longer conversation, right? And so when we think about the dynamic, the best way to help someone in need is for a loved one to help them. And your love is not associated by just blood. Family is extended beyond that. And it also means that we have to get very intentional around what are we doing around foster care? What are we doing around collective support services? How are we providing additional funding when it comes to at-home care as well? Because again, that dynamic is intertwined. Why? Because it's not just the person who is going through the challenges, it's the impact of being the caregiver that is not talked about, and how exhausting and draining that is. So that's why you have to have that comprehensive approach in a very real way to make sure you can help the family to support their loved one.
Thank you. How's everybody doing? Okay, we're gonna have a 30-second dance break in our minds. In our minds. Okay, we're gonna keep it moving, guys. All right. Okay, so question 6. This is social justice, okay? So the issue is, immigrant communities remain among the most underserved when it comes to mental health support, including the fast-growing Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander community. These residents face significant language barriers, cultural stigma, and a shortage of bilingual, culturally competent mental health professionals. In addition, community organizations that are trusted in immigrant communities often lack the resource to provide sustained mental health support due to short-term funding cycles, administrative burdens, and an inequitable grant system that favors large institutions. Question is, how do you plan to increase mental health resources and awareness for immigrant communities? If elected, what specific support would you give to organizations providing mental health services in AANHPI? Let's start in the middle again, okay? All right, so let's start with Whitney.
This is an issue I recognize the importance of it. It is not one I am super familiar with, so I will not waste your time pontificating about something that I have not studied deeply, so I will pass the microphone.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate your honesty. Okay. Well, I'm sure Selma, go.
So New York City, you have a lot of projects. You are keeping people to rely on just enough cash to survive. You have a lot of projects, but there's not anything that really connects it. We don't necessarily know within, I'm in a 10469 zip code, what is it that you have available? What is the funding that individuals have already gotten? What is it that they need more of? And so we need a better assessment of the current state of those individuals doing the work. And what I have found is those people doing the work are not getting the money and the funding, and they're always on a shoestring budget. Let me help you make some millionaires. Let us build businesses. I spent the night last night in Columbia Universities with individuals who were impacted by the criminal justice system. And guess what they were doing? They were doing business pitches where they talked about things like, oh, I want to do more art spaces, and that's something that I've made a commitment to. We have solutions. It's just that the money and the resources are not touching you. So I want to begin to first assess, what do we have in place? And what's working, and now let's give those individuals the additional funding and the resources that they need in order to really do the work. No more projects. Let's be intentional about really lifting individuals up so that they can feel successful in this space. I think we have the talent, but it's very disparate, and we fundamentally, I don't know what works. I mean, we know people are doing the work, but do we fundamentally know, for example, who's working with kids between 15 and 19? Who's working with foster children? There really is not an assessment of the current state. We have a lot of projects. Let's end projects and let's build community.
Thank you.
So I'm going to give quick context to the question. So my full name is Michael Alexander Blake, and for any Jamaicans, West Indians in the room, you can appreciate, my parents named me after Michael Manley and Alexander Bustamante. And so when we talk through the conversation, I say, bless up, maybe say respect, man, right? When we talk through the conversation around immigration and what are we doing to protect our immigrants and protect our people of color as it relates to mental health, any of us who come from an immigrant background, raise your hand if you come from an immigrant background. Exactly. It is impossible to feel safe and secure and your mental health not to be impacted in this Trump environment right now. When you are wondering every single day, is your loved one going to get picked up as a citizen? If you're wondering right now, can I take my kid to school because ICE might roll up on them? I am wondering, as the street vendor, will they be protected? And so when we talk through this, we got to be very clear. One of the reasons why we are here right now is that you have a mayor that was doing unconstitutional actions to work with Donald Trump that would have led to people getting deported and kicked out. That's the reason why we're having these conversations, because you had a man who cared more about staying out of jail rather than helping the people. And that is intertwined to this conversation around immigration and mental health, because we are wondering, what are we going to do? So very practically, we have to make sure that we have more lawyers to represent our immigrant communities who are going through these mental health concerns. When you have 180,000 immigrants right now that are wondering about legal protection because they don't have representation, that is real. We have to then make sure that we are being very clear. Unless there is a signed judicial warrant, you're not going to allow these entities into our spaces, because that also creates greater concern. Lastly, and intertwined, we have to stop with the MAGA Republican talking points of allowing it to just be about Latino communities when it comes to immigration and mental health. We all need to be intertwined, because as King said, in the end, remember not the enemy, the silence of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. You don't get the luxury to be silent right now when they come for any of us.
Thank you. Jim? Yes, Jim.
Me?
Jim.
Oh, great.
You are Jim.
Me? Okay.
You are.
Listen, I'm totally fine doing this. First of all, give it up for Whitney for giving like that. I thought that was just so awesome. Thank you. So the question is about the Asian community and getting them the support that we need from a social justice perspective. But if you think that this is a problem in the Asian community, it's not just a problem in the Asian community. It's a problem in the Telugu community. It's a problem in the Yemeni community, because there just isn't enough in terms of city services giving mental health supports to those communities, right? There's a couple of problems here. Number one is, and this talks to the issue that I agree with my friend Michael Blake on, which is the way that we deal with not-for-profits. There are not-for-profits in the city that give specific, bespoke, language-specific mental health services to each of these communities, and they go into the pipeline that is the city bureaucracy, where they have to even start providing services before they get paid. So that needs to be fixed, number one. Number two, we have to create a pipeline of therapists. There aren't enough English language therapists to give the mental health support services we need. Can you imagine, other than the not-for-profits that do this, how few people there are that are therapists that can speak in Mandarin or in various other Chinese dialects, let alone Telugu or Yemeni or other languages? So we have to create a pipeline to do that, and we can use our universities to subsidize that. But in the meantime, we have to rely on virtual services, and we have to reach outside our borders. There are international organizations that give language-specific mental health services that will provide services to city residents virtually, and the city needs to be at the vanguard to at least provide that. Listen, I'm not a big believer in making the best the enemy of the good, and until we can come up with the best possible system, we can use international resources and contracts to give services to specific languages that have the highest poor mental health outcomes. The data is there, we can identify them, we can pair them with international therapists and do a better job serving those communities' mental health needs. Hey, I'm right on the stop.
Right.
There you
Great,
go.
Great stuff. Thank you. Zohran?
So this question is quite personal, as it's a question about Asian American New Yorkers and the unmet mental health needs. I stand before you as the first South Asian elected official to ever run for mayor in our city. And I stand before you, more importantly, as a New Yorker who grew up in this city and who grew up with many other immigrants as I came to this city and this country when I was 7 years old, for whom mental health and the treatment of it has an immense stigma. And I grew up first in Morningside Heights, and I started to work in Bay Ridge. And to get to Bay Ridge from Morningside Heights, as many of you might imagine, is about 1.5 hours each way. And this was in 2017, at a time when our subways were at their worst. It was called the Summer of Hell. And this was right at the time, with all of these malfunctions, that if you were ever on the N train, you knew that you were going to get stuck in the tunnel before you got to Atlantic Avenue. It still happens to many. And just my luck, that's when I developed claustrophobia. A feeling that if I was stuck, then I was losing control of myself. And I was lucky in that my parents encouraged me in that moment to try therapy. And so I went to a number of sessions of cognitive behavioral therapy where I met with a specialist who spoke to me about the anxieties that underpin that feeling of claustrophobia. And while I was wishing that then Governor Cuomo would actually fix the subways, I was also trying to work on myself so that I could deal with those breakdowns. And I was lucky that after a few sessions, I had the tools necessary to keep going on a 1.5-hour trip from the one train to the N train to the R train, and to then take it back that same night at 11 p.m. with even more stops and breaks and stoppages. And ultimately, what we need is to reduce the stigma of this crisis. We need to increase the mental health provision and service that we see across our city. And we need to do so in a manner that we are proud of. And I can tell you, as the first Asian American mayor of this city, I will be proud to invest in community mental health navigators that will increase access to mental health services, reduce the necessity of inpatient services, and ensure that we do not ask New Yorkers in crisis to go to a specialist. We send specialists to those New Yorkers. Because the easier we make something, the more effective we make it as well.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a new candidate. Brad, please take the floor, introduce yourself.
Good evening. I'm New York City Controller Brad Lander. I'm delighted to be here. I apologize for being late. I had promised a group of public housing leaders in Harlem I would be there tonight. And it's a big city, but this was a very important forum for me to get to. You know, people ask each time, like, do you think there's too many forums? And I say, you know what? It is great that there are some New Yorkers who recognize how central the mental health crisis is in New York City and want the mayoral candidates to come down and say what they're going to do about it. And that's true about parks, and that's true about foster care, but it is sure true about mental health, which was a crisis before the pandemic, but which the pandemic really elevated. Like, it just made mental illness, a much broader thing on our streets, in our schools, and in our families. It's an important issue to me personally. I'm the son of a public elementary school guidance counselor and grew up hearing the stories about what it takes to help make sure that families can thrive. My sister-in-law is a psychiatric nurse practitioner at the VA, and what's happening there is making me just ill. And then I was proud as an affordable housing developer to be one of the first that teamed up with supportive housing providers like Community Access and folks in the room to say all our neighborhoods have to show up. So, number one commitment in this campaign is to end street homelessness for people with serious mental illness. I commit to get guidance counselors and school social workers in every single school so our young people have the services that they deserve, and to provide the community mental health infrastructure that can help all our neighbors to thrive. Thank you so much for welcoming me tonight.
Thank you. In the interest of time, we will have a 2-question lightning round, 1-minute answers. And we're going to start with Brad. Here's the question. Solitary confinement has been shown to exacerbate mental health concerns. Would you immediately rescind Mayor Adams' emergency executive order that has suspended the implementation of Local Law 42 to end solitary confinement in New York City jails? Please keep your answer to yes or no, but you have a minute. So,
all right.
If you want to just say yes, yes, yes.
Well, how
okay,
about
a little humor.
How about on day one? Yes, on day one. I've been on Rikers, a bunch of times, and I have gone each time to see people in involuntary protective custody or solitary. It is torture. We are doing it right now, and I will end that executive order on day one of my mayoralty.
Thank you. Right on down the line.
Yes, I will end that on day one. And I think as we think about the ways in which we have failed our city, Rikers Island is right there at the top of that list. And as we think about the lives that we have ruined, and as we think about the torture, as Brad was saying, that we have conducted, we have to understand not only the recognition of it, but also the responsibility to change it. And that is something that I would do from the very beginning of my administration.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
Yeah, so I will say yes, because it's the law, but I also want to say something that needs to be said, which is our system needs to protect corrections officers as well. And there is a cohort of the people that have been kept in solitary confinement that need to be segregated. Now, the way we're segregating them is terrible, and by the way, it's illegal as of now, although the executive order arguably countermands that. I think that the court is going to overturn that. But we do need to invest in our prisoners, and part of that investment has to be taking the very dangerous, often recidivists, and giving them the support, including the mental health support, by the way, that they need, that they are not getting in prison, so that they can come out into reentry programs that we can be proud of, because they're comprehensive and they actually are designed to help prisoners succeed. So in that period of time, I'm going to be working very closely with the Corrections Department to check all of those boxes, because nothing's more important.
Thank you.
I agree with the caveats that Jim has added, and I actually think while wildly over budget and behind schedule, the plan to shift New York to smaller borough-based jails, I do think smaller, rebuilt Rikers will be part of that. So I think we will have 5 borough-based jail systems. And I think as part of those jails, there needs to be some area that is segregated for inmates that are very dangerous to themselves, to other inmates, and to corrections officers. But I agree that the current solitary confinement is overused and is implemented poorly, and needs to be completely reformed.
Thank you.
Absolutely end it, but let's talk about the work. And so, yes, we end it, but what about the culture which fueled it to begin with? And so doing the work is really about retraining those individuals, your officers, and really addressing the culture of passive violence in those spaces. I did one of the largest audit of Rikers Island, and things like the bathrooms don't work, the food, right? All of these things, the physical space between people, it's passive violence that is fueling it. And let me let you know right now, I am Dr. Bartholomew, and I plan on closing Rikers Island. And it's not about size, it's about culture. Because plenty of people, I worked with schools, you can take a school and make small schools. You have to change the culture. You have to go after leadership. You have to let the workers know that they are part of the network of care. They didn't take that job to become abusive, but there's a culture in that place and space where they're not getting the training and the leadership to say this is how we want to treat people. Close Rikers within the 4 years, and how about we address the culture?
Thank you.
So yes, full stop. We need to shut down Rikers. We need to close Rikers. Full stop. This is personal for many reasons. I had two brothers who were previously incarcerated. I've been to Rikers many times as that family member, as an assembly member. Also, I was the one who represented Khalif Browder and his family when I was in the assembly. So let's be very clear. Khalif would be alive if we actually had a humane society right now. This is a young man who was locked up because he allegedly stole a book bag. Then multiple times tried to take his life because people weren't listening to him. Then he tried to turn his life around when he got out and he was at Bronx Community College, and people still weren't supporting him. It is a racist, unconstitutional, unjust system that's happening at Rikers. Rikers is actually the second largest mental health institution in America to LA County's hospital. It is the understanding that there is no business why it is still there. And so when we're being very clear and very direct about this, there is no business at all that we have a place that is not about trying to rehabilitate someone. It is effectively trying to keep people locked down, many of which have actually not been convicted of something. They're just being held there for long periods of time. Maybe if we help the kid have a book in their book bag rather than try to arrest them for a dime bag, we would actually have a better society.
Thank you. Okay. All right, the second question. Do you believe that the city's emergency mental health crisis response teams, known as Be Heard teams, should include a peer with lived mental health experience on each team? 1 minute answers. We'll start on the end again. Brad.
Yes, absolutely. Including peers is a critical way of making these teams work. I mentioned the work of Community Access and Steve Coe before. He's the first one, I think, a decade ago who came to talk to me about crisis response teams and what a difference they can make. And let's remember, to distinguish between when people are experiencing a mental health crisis and when there's a public safety issue. That's why when I say my #1 commitment in this campaign is to end street homelessness for people with serious mental illness, if what we do is have outreach workers connect people to housing and services, we can dramatically reduce the number of people who are mentally ill sleeping on the streets and have many fewer incidents. And of course that work is done better with peers and social workers. But even when there is a need for a public safety response, peers can still de-escalate. Peers have been there. So yes, and there are cities that are doing this better than we are. Denver, Eugene, a lot of places that I'm proud as local progress to have brought folks to see. Let's bring that back to New York City. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. It is a shame that the Adams administration has implemented Be Heard in a manner that it could never have been successful. And what my administration will do is overhaul that program. Yes, we will add peers, and we will ensure that every single neighborhood has a Be Heard team. And that the neighborhoods with the highest need, the 20 neighborhoods with that highest need, will have 2 to 3 teams. We are going to increase funding into Be Heard by 150%. And ultimately, we are doing this because we care about public safety. Every New Yorker deserves to be safe, and every New Yorker must be protected. And yet what we're seeing is a system today that is failing to do so. I sat with the family of Wynn Rosario, a young New Yorker who was in the throes of mental health crisis and called 911 asking for assistance. They sent 2 police officers who were trained in mental health response, and they killed him in his home in less than 3 minutes. If you watch that footage, you will understand just a glimpse of the pain that family feels each and every day. That does not keep any of us safe. What we need is something that is actually shown by the data to be effective, and peer-led response teams be heard. These are the answers to deliver public safety, not just engage in this discourse ad nauseum.
So I hate to use this phrase, but I'm in violent agreement with everything that's been said so far. And the data shows that when peers are involved, there are better outcomes. But I will lend my voice to what I assume is universal acceptance of this notion, which is I don't care how well or thoroughly you train the NYPD. They have no business having anything to do with mental health. I'm not just saying this because it happened to my sister. I'm saying this because that is what the data shows. You need to get police out of the mental health system. We don't have a system that's fully set up for it yet. This is the first time I've heard anyone talk about the number of Be Heard teams. I think that that's a great idea. I endorse it, but we can do better. We have to come up with a different system that allows us to deploy, because it's not always the case when a call comes in that you know that it's a mental health crisis. That's the problem, right? There's this gray area. We've got to solve that. I don't know how to solve it, but what I know is that that is part of the problem. And when we solve that problem, we have to make sure that NYPD does not have a position, a place in mental health responses.
Thank you.
I think it's an excellent idea to have peers as part of the mental health response teams, not just Be Heard, but just generally intensive mental health treatment teams. I think there are 31 in the city now. I think we need to at least double that. My only caveat to this would be I would not want to let that requirement interfere with the need to expand these teams. I'm not sure how easy it is to find qualified people to staff this.
Thank you.
So the mindset of us is always about a program, always about another initiative. We have to now come together and really think about an ecosystem. What is a health ecosystem? What goes into that ecosystem? So the team, yes, belongs there, but in reality, the police officer also belongs there, because if someone is having a really violent attack, you're going to want to call that police officer. What we need to do is retrain them and give them some better tools. So in your ecosystem, you cannot just have individual programs. That's what you have right now. All of these individual programs, they're not well connected. They're not working together. We don't know what's working and what's not. So we need to build an ecosystem around mental health. I want to also say to you that I'm a mom. I have a son who not only, he says that Obama works for him. He is the face of My Brother's Keeper at a national level. He was just named the Rising Black Scientist of the Year for his research on Parkinson. And what he's connecting is the gut-brain-heart connection. You cannot address mental illness and just think it's just something about the mind. You have to go after the food. You have to go after the relationships. You have to go after these things and really put it together. No more individual and isolated programs. We need an ecosystem, and you have what it takes, New York. Let's come together and do this work together.
Thank you.
To your question, yes, directly, because at the end of the day, I would never want any other situation happening in my life where someone who has not had lived experience is not a part of the solution. It just makes common logical sense in what we're doing. I often jokingly say that I wouldn't want a mechanic to be the one that heals me at the doctor's office. I wouldn't want a chef to be the one that comes and fixes my tie. It doesn't make logical sense. But yet we have a city right now where we're asking police officers to address mental health. That doesn't make any sense at all. They're not trained on it. but they're not trained on it. That's what you actually need. You need the people who have done the work. And officers are directly saying they actually don't want to be a part of that process because they're not knowing how to handle the situation. Most of us don't want to know how to situation. So again, it goes to that direct experience. You want someone who actually has done the journey to be addressing it in real time. Because when you don't have that, someone who's not trained becomes trigger happy.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached a point in the program where we're going to ask each candidate to share a 2-minute closing statement, and we will start with Zohran.
Thank you so much for having me. It has been such a pleasure. As we speak about mental health, we know that this is a crisis that has grown. It has grown even before the pandemic. We look at over the last decade, 911 mental health calls have skyrocketed by 37%. And I believe that to address this crisis, we have to follow that which has already worked. Too often we are presented the same solutions that give us the same failures. And so I am proud that my campaign has put forward a proposal to create a Department of Community Safety, the DCS, which would bring that which has worked elsewhere in the country and that which is working here in our own city at a pilot level and deliver it to each and every New Yorker as we keep them safe. It would ensure that we take on the crises of gun violence, treating it as a public health crisis, that we would take on the mental health crisis, homelessness, hate violence, victim services, and do so by training those that are best served at this work. I stand here today because ultimately what I am interested in the most are outcomes. I want to deliver public safety, not just talk about the same things we've been told for so long. And now we are here with 54 days until this election. 54 days until we decide whether we want to turn the page in a chapter of failed leadership in our city. And I am here as the second place candidate in this race, a candidate that has raised $8 million, more than we can even spend in this race, and a candidate with 18,000 volunteers who have knocked on 270,000 doors across these 5 boroughs. And ultimately what I present is a vision to move past the failures of the past and the present and finally to deliver us a future where working class New Yorkers don't just build this city, they don't just sustain this city, but they finally can afford to live in this city. And I think about the words of Dr. King every day, who said, "What good is having the right to sit at a lunch counter if you can't afford to buy a hamburger?" I want us to have rights, and I want us to have the ability to exercise those rights. That is what I am running to do, to make this a city that you can continue to live in and call your home. And we will do that by providing mental health services. We will do that by freezing the rent, by making buses fast and free, delivering universal child care, and electing a new mayor on June 24th. My name is Zohran Mamdani. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Michael?
I'm running because we need and deserve a new generation of leadership. I'm running because we deserve better than we have right now in this city. I'm running because we're very focused on how do we actually address the true cost of living and affordability in very specific ways. I do believe we should end having credit scores used for rent and home ownership applications. I do believe we have to go further when it comes for our children and it comes to civics and financial literacy and mental health. We do believe that we actually have to change what happens when it comes to affordable housing, because who is it actually affordable to right now? Where you expand out income thresholds, because right now you have to be rich or poor enough to get access to a home. It's the reason why we have to have local median income, because too often you're wondering, how do I pay my bills? And equally, you have to help people have greater wages to change what's happening in their lives. It's about seriously understanding that the attacks that are happening in our city as it relates to attacks on Medicaid, attacks on immigration, attacks on us as a people, that we have to do this differently. And as the only person in this race who has actually been a part of a team that defeated Donald Trump when I was vice chair of the DNC, and as the only person in this race who has White House, State House, and local experience, I want for you to imagine, who do you want to be leading the city on January 1st next year? When all the attacks that continue to come for us, usually when people get cut, what happens are people of color and low-income communities and those that are on the right side of justice. I am coming to you right now as a child of God, as a son of immigrants, and someone who is ready to lead right now. My name is Michael Blake. Now I'm going to use these final 30 seconds to be very practical around mental health and how we mobilize in this way. I want for you to read our vision. I want you to see our policies. I want you to see what's possible. The website is blakefornyc.com, but more critically, I want you to imagine and think about what was said in Mark 5:20. After Jesus healed the man, and he was about to go to the other side and was wondering what to do, he said, "Go and tell your friends what I have done." I am asking that you tell people tonight that you have seen the next generation of black male leadership that is ready to lead this city. My name is Michael Blake, and I ask that you rank me first to be your mayor on June 24th.
Thank you. Thank you. Whitney. Whitney.
I think we've heard from all of us, and I agree that we need to expand treatment for mental health, people suffering mental health issues, from the Be Heard program to intensive mobile treatment units and teams, et cetera. I do think that what has not come up tonight is there are three big issues here in the city and nationally happening in Albany that I'd at least like to mention that I think are important because there's a tension here between the rights of the individual and the rights of the community. And so in the latest budget that I believe there has been an agreement to change our state law on involuntary commitment. I support that, and I think we're joining 48 other states that if someone is not able to care for themselves as judged by a mental health professional, that they can be involuntarily committed. Second issue is do you allow people to sleep overnight in our public spaces? I believe that should not be allowed. The City Council actually passed a law enshrining the right to sleep outside. And both red and blue states are drawing the line there, and I think we should too. I do not think a civilized city should allow people to sleep overnight in its public spaces. The last issue is should the police enforce misdemeanors, quality of life crimes, open air drug use, petty larcenies? And I think in this city, over the past 5 years, the pendulum swung too far. We effectively decriminalized almost all low-level crimes. It severely impacted our quality of life. And I think Commissioner Tisch, who I've committed to keeping on board, asking her to stay as police commissioner, is correct in asking police to enforce misdemeanors and start considering quality of life so that police aren't just responding to serious felonies. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott? Scott? Oh, what? Oh, I'm sorry, my bad. I'm sorry. Brad, I'm sorry, Brad. It's okay.
Thank you to the New York City Mental Health Collective for organizing this. Thank you, Reverend Moore and First Baptist Church of Crown Heights for hosting it. This is a really important forum to have. So I'm Brad Lander. I'm running for mayor to bring honest, effective leadership back to City Hall where we desperately need it, to stand up and fight this authoritarian bully in the White House on behalf of New Yorkers, this president who has demeaned people with disabilities and people with mental health issues. We've got to have somebody who's going to stand up and fight him on behalf of our neighbors, on behalf of immigrants, on behalf of our budget and Medicaid and Medicare, on behalf of our values. But we also need someone who can govern this city more effectively so we could live up to our values, because we're not living up to New York City values when we've got a couple thousand mentally ill people sleeping on subway platforms and the sidewalks of our neighborhood, when we've got 2,500 vacant supportive housing and SRO units they could be sleeping in tonight. We're not living up to our values when crony corruption has taken over City Hall. We're not living up to our values when families can't find housing they can afford. That is what I've been doing my whole career as a nonprofit affordable and supportive housing advocate, as a city council member, and now as controller. I know how to make government work. to fight back against what Trump is doing and to live up better to our values. So if you're looking to end street homelessness for people with serious mental illness, to build enough affordable housing that our young people would have a place to live, not just to rent, but even to imagine they could buy in our city, and to support and protect our families, then that is what I will do with what I've learned as controller, and in partnership with folks like the ones in the room, because this can be a city that's safer for all when we deliver on the kinds of policies that we're talking about here tonight. Thank you very much. Brad Lander, humbly.
Thank you. Thank you. Selma?
Get to stand. I stepped into the mayor's race because I am deeply concerned about you and your children. Ask any of these individuals who are in this race, how many of them have weed buses in front of their offices? But you have weed buses parked in front of your schools. Your children can't pee on the street, but they can go buy weed. In the context of mental health and mental illness, how do I help schools to change their mindset? Everybody thinks that, oh, I need more guidance counselors in order to get children to go to college. But it is everybody's responsibility to get a child to go to college. It is everybody's responsibility to come together now and support the members who are having challenges around mental health. But we have to now bring the talented individuals to the table. So I want to build networks of care. I also want to lift you out of poverty, like I said, under the leadership of all of your leaders, from your comptrollers, your mayors, your city council. They have decided that we should be poor, that you only make 1% of a budget. 1% for black men, 1% for women, 1% for Hispanics. You cannot impact education, housing, and those things, right, if you are constantly feeling that stress. So I want to help really build ecosystems across the city. And more importantly, I don't want to talk about you. I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk with you. Come to the table and let's solve these problems together. Let's really assess what's working. Let's assess who's doing the work. And let's elevate them and let's give them the resources and the supports that they need in order to be successful. I am confident that the solutions are in the community. And we have a lot of programs that are already working, but we need now to connect them. So I am Dr. Selma Bartholomew. Please allow me to help you. Please allow me to partner with you to really change the culture of passive violence and physical violence in our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim, to close it out.
I was going to say, that's so exciting. I get the last word. So first of all, you've had 5 Democrats here. How about a round of applause for the 5 people that you should rank in the Democratic primary? I am not a Democrat. I'm an independent. And why am I an independent? The same reason that New York City has gone from very few independent voters to now almost 1 million. Almost 1 million New Yorkers are independent. Why? For the same reason that I offer, Jim Walden, by the way, independent vision. And it's not because of any of these wonderful people here. They're dedicated public servants. It is because our system has failed us at the local, state, and federal levels. And a large part of that has to do with the way our parties are not working, the way our parties are producing bad candidates, the way our parties are producing people that will tell you whatever they want to tell you when it's election time and they need something from you, but you'll never see them again in your community. I have fought for 30 years for the indigent, the mentally ill, public school children, residents of low-income housing, to name just few of the dozens of cases that I've taken on and causes that I've taken on. Not because I wanted the acclaim, not because I was running for office, but because I chose to, because of the lived experience I had as a kid that literally had to leave my hometown because I had no way out, and I came to this city to make my mark on the world and do good. And I started as a federal prosecutor battling the mob at a time when the mob was the worst thing in New York City when it came to crime. And then for 23 years, I've brought these cases because I wanted to. And there's a difference between me and politicians. For 30 years, I've had to get things done. That's what my clients demanded. And that's what I delivered was results. So I'm not used to saying I'm going to do something and then I don't do it. I get the job done every time, and that's what I'm going to do for you when you elect me to City Hall. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Can everyone give it a round for our moderator, Mr. Coleman, Chad Coleman. Thank you, and all our candidates who showed up in person. We're gonna quickly show a video informing you about ranked choice voting.
If no candidate gets more than 50%, ballots will be counted in rounds. Round by round, the candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated. So, if your top-rated candidate is eliminated, your vote goes to your next highest choice. This keeps going until only 2 candidates remain. The person with the most votes wins. Ranked choice voting is already popular in many cities around the country because voters find that it helps more voices be heard. Now it's our turn. Get answers to your questions and learn more at nyccfb.info/RCV.
All right, thank you. Before everyone leaves, just to sum up the video, we just felt it important that we highlight the ranked choice voting because we really want everyone in this room to know that you have 5 options when you go to vote. So definitely pick a candidate that aligns with your core values. Start with the one that identifies most with what you want to see for the city, for you, for your family, your community, and then you can go on down the line. You have 5 choices to do so. Don't pick someone just because you know them, just because your neighbor told you to. Pick someone, again, that aligns with your core values. Take advantage of this. According to the video, New Yorkers, you guys wanted this. This is the second time this is happening where you're allowed to do this. And we don't always get what we want, okay? So just make sure you take advantage of this, the 5 options. Again, do not vote for the same person more than once, but do use the 5 options you have to pick all the candidates that align with your core values. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Have a good night. Vote. Make sure you vote.